All right, what's up? What's up, Instagram? What's up, Facebook? So we are live. It's gonna be jam-packed tonight. You're gonna have to hang with me. I got a lot of stuff that we need to brush over, bring people up to speed. We do have a lot of new followers, so if you've heard it before, then be supportive in the comment box. That's the best thing to do, because this is about saving America, but it's also about saving humanity and the world. So, President Trump, and I don't have the ball cap next to me right now, set for the never surrender, but President Trump's the one that put 45-47 on his ball cap. I didn't do that. All right. And even if I would have made that suggestion, if he did it, that means that we're pretty correct on this. And I say we. I'm talking about me and all of our tribe. President Trump is 1,000% accurate. All right. Now, you're going to have there's two different groups right now that's creating resistance. You have your liberals and your Democrats who just absolutely look atrocious right now, and they look like they don't even want to support anything good, anything that's productive, which is sad. However, they're about 10%. They look and sound big, but they're really not. All right, Dan Scavino and President Trump's told you this, that don't let the 10% make you think they're the 90. They're not. All right. The other side that's creating resistance are your Republicans, your conservatives, and the normal crowd out there who still sit like little birds in a nest and just wait for Fox News to drop just a little. If you've ever picked a honeysuckle, that's why country music, if country music singers actually knew what a honeysuckle is and was, they wouldn't sing about it too much being honeysuckle lips, because if you've ever picked a honeysuckle, it's a little bitty stem, and when you pull the stem out, the drop is tinier than a flea fart. All right, it's tiny. All right, so that is what Fox News drops you. They don't tell you anything. Now, here lately, because we're in a military government, military occupation, military operation, continuity government, they've been doing a little bit more than what they did in years past, but not enough that the average people go, I'm going to go look that up. They don't do it. So therefore, we become the messengers. All right? And that's exactly what God has put me here for. I've taken every rod and sling and arrow. I've heard every death threat. I have heard everything. I've heard all of it. It's part of it. All right. However, we still have to be the light to certain people. We still have to go out there and have the warrior mentality of no person left behind. All right. So that's what we're doing. That's what I'm doing. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit, bring us up to speed, but I think it's going to be really cool for everybody to share this video with your friends and family. All right, remember one thing. I operate on my time and my dime. All right, so when you hear people out there are people who will look at the comment box and be deterred from people in the comment box. So when you see someone negative in there, light them up, baby, like a Christmas tree in a trailer park in Podunk, Mississippi. Light them up with facts, though. Don't hit them with all this other stuff. Just light them up with facts and say, how about you go read, study, and comprehend what we've put together. All right? Because again, these right here on my time and my dime, you don't have to buy them. When people say he's a grifter, I can't make people buy these. But guess what President Trump just did a week and a half ago? He signed an executive order for intellectual property. And guess what I am? Independent. No ghostwriter. I wrote these on my own. 217 pages, 596 pages. They're number one bestsellers for a reason, because the people who are buying them and have read and studied them are going, holy crap, this is everything in a chronological order that outlines the dash on President Trump's ball cap, 45-47. That's it. You wouldn't need anything else. You wouldn't need drama. You wouldn't need propaganda. You wouldn't have to watch. You wouldn't even have to watch more than 2 podcasts a day if you just had me in your life. And if you can't afford the books, no problemo. All of that material are on all of my accounts. A lot more on Telegram and a lot more on Facebook, because you can write longer articles at a time without having to be creative like on True Social and X, former Twitter. But again, and then also I have these things called the documents.info. Now some of the links don't work, as President Trump's alluded to. Some of the mainstream media tried to delete a lot of stuff. They tried to delete things. All right. So some of the links on there don't work anymore because they tried, the deep state tried to get rid of some things. However, the documents were what I did excerpts from 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021. I did excerpts and just kept like a documentary of what was going on with tariffs and different things like that. All right. So it was enough to get people in the ballpark. And then I signed my publicity contract February the 18th, 2023 at Trump International at the man's table, reserved table. He's never let anybody sit there in his chair. All right. People can sit at his table when they're invited, but in his chair. I'm the first to do it. All right. So if you got a problem with me, you just got a problem with life, and you can move on. All right. It's funny how all the people who are obsessed with me, they're following me, and they just can't get enough of me. I didn't know skinny was so sexy, but thank you. So you got to go back and remember, see what everybody's doing right now, and I still see comments, good people, good followers, good Americans, but I'll see comments and I'm like, you're not studying and or you've done forgotten 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. You can't forget that. When you see 45-47, that is the operation. That is your blueprint. That is your visual. You put a line before that in front of 45, then you have your 45, then you have your dash, then you have your 47. Now there's not going to be a line behind that initially, but for visualization's sake, just think of it like that for a moment, that is an operation. It is a strategic, unique blueprint and plan with laws and orders that are unique laws and orders put together that outline a military government, a military operation, a continuity of government, continuity of operations, government in exile. It's all of those, puppet government, etc. We're going to go over a few of those. That's what you got to remember. But you can't forget that. You have to be able to take all this and put it in a blueprint, as if you're in an aircraft and you're looking down at your flat earth, round earth, whatever the heck you believe. Don't get in the comment box and argue about that. Making a joke. Move on. But you got to get in the aircraft and look down and see the whole picture. So everybody's forgotten about President Trump way back 2017. Follow the money. Follow the money. The best is yet to come. You forgot about all those. You forget about every little detail and aspect that's made this so different and so unique. If it wasn't so different, so unique, the liberals wouldn't be losing their minds for sure. All right, the fascists, the real fascists. They call us fascists. They're the real fascists. They're the real socialists. They're the real Marxists. They're the real communists. And they got it backwards. All right, because they don't know anything about our history. I have never met one single liberal who's ever mentioned the Declaration of Independence. Not one time have they ever mentioned the Declaration of Independence. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations becomes disruptive, then what? It is their right, us, we the people, it is their right, it is their duty to what? Overthrow such government and reestablish it on what? A new foundation. Not one liberal has ever uttered the Declaration of Independence. Not any that I've ever seen. All right, so President Trump, all right, on June the 12th, 2015, a new law war manual was reissued. All right, law war manual. June 16th, he rolls down the escalator. All right. February 2016, fast forward. February 2016, Obama made a comment about Guantanamo Bay. Well, guess who was still president February 2016? Obama. All right. Said he was going to shut down Guantanamo Bay. Same day, President Trump made a comment in February 2016. Oh, and by the way, we're going to keep Guantanamo Bay open. On January the 30th, 2018, Executive Order 13823, President Trump signed an executive order to revoke Obama's executive order to shut it down. Guess who did not ever revoke any portion of 13823? Biden. All right, still open. April 2016, Special Operations Command put out a new publication called Unconventional Warfare Pocket Guide. Had a new pyramid in there, page 11. All right, for some reason right now, they've taken it down, the whole publication. And I know why, because right now they're starting to show you what I've been talking about 3 and 4 years ago. All right, right now they're starting to talk about habeas corpus and a few other things that I already have in print way back in 2023 and even before that. All right, so they're just now talking about that. So you can't, now there's a government site separate. You got to know how to find it, and I got it. It's still up for print there, but it's not on the Special Operations Command. It's going to a null page at the moment. All right, very key though. All right, May 2016, the United States Supreme Court clarified. Who was the Supreme Court in 2016? Wasn't President Trump's nominees. The Supreme Court, out of nowhere, is clarifying that military courts and military laws are separate from federal courts and federal laws. Why of all times? Why of all things? Why of all topics? Are the United States Supreme Court clarifying that military courts and military laws are separate from federal courts and federal laws? No coincidence. Called the Military Justice Act of 2016. November the 8th, 2016, President Trump, remember, he'll never be president. Remember that? Remember the mainstream media? He's never going to be president. Oh, it's a joke. He's never going to be president. Never. Remember that? Remember that? And what happened November the 8th, 2016? And what was on TV at 4:56 a.m. Central Standard Time that I happened to capture and put out there for the world to remember? Oh, this little thing on Fox News, wee hours of the morning after President Trump won the presidency. What did it say? Ready for reset. And the word reset was in single quotations. And it was who saying that? Putin. Ready for reset. January the 17th, on the anniversary of the military-industrial complex, in which we have a lot of veterans who struggle with that. They struggle with the separation that right now, that what you did in the military, like physically did, has nothing to do with the laws and the orders of what's going on currently. You look even worse if you don't know what's going on, especially if you're going to attack me for not having a DD-214 like yours, and for not having the extensive ribbon bay, patch bay, badges, etc., you look worse. All right? Because January the 17th, 1961, 5-star general, rare 5-star general, supreme commander, military governor, there's that military governor topic, military governor, Dwight D. Eisenhower, gave a speech before Kennedy took over that he did not like where the military was going because of money. And all of these military-industrial complexes, not a lot of them. Overall, there's a lot of great veterans out there, but there's a few out there who are all about war. War, war, war. War is not an opportunity. And for you to say that or to make it sound like you're presenting that, you have a problem. You have a serious problem, and you fail to remember humanity. All right, so war is not an opportunity. Eisenhower warned about this. And all of this military-industrial complex, most of it's because most veterans that have a military-industrial complex, they didn't even want to be in the military. They went in the military because they didn't want to go to work. They didn't want to go to college. They didn't want to be told what to do by a superior boss. But they were okay with doing what was told in the military because it gave them a sense of nostalgia. That's fine. Whatever. To each their own. You fight for it. I got a GI Bill just like you got one. All right. We got privileges. We all get privileges for serving. But it's right here that matters. All right. And so when you're knocking someone for their what opportunities were cut from them and or they didn't get but you got, but claiming that war is an opportunity, you got a problem. A serious problem. All right. So January the 17th, on the anniversary of that speech, it's amazing what they've done. They've taken all these anniversaries in history and put something on them, not to rewrite history, but to reset it. So on January the 17th, 2017, 3 days before President Trump took the famous oath and the visuals of what took place with the military, 2017, January the 17th, 3 days before, the Federal Continuity Directive 1 was reissued for a continuity of government. But it's like the bigger umbrella. All right. Fast forward, June 13th, 2017. Federal Continuity Directive 2, which is more the implementation phases of it. That's a lot of reading, a lot of pages. But it was reissued. So it's a Federal Continuity Directive 1 and a Federal Continuity Directive 2. And they're like umbrellas, and they have publications that have come out under them. And they all align with what's been going on. Now, backtrack back to January the 20th, 2017. President Trump, right when he said we're taking the power out of D.C. and we're giving it back to you, the people, the military walked down behind him. Officers with headbands on, like this one right here. One of them was military intelligence, and the other was Judge Advocate General. All right, straight up. Who collects evidence in the military? Of all things, military intel. Pretty self-explanatory. But who puts it in a courts martial? JAG, Judge Advocate Generals. Who judges it? JAG, Judge Advocate Generals. All throughout 2017 to 2020, President Trump went on these capitulations. They call it the capitulation tour. All right, it's not labeled that officially in government, but that's what people have done externally, and that's okay because it was a visual. You saw all these nations capitulating to President Trump. The only way that was made possible is the military. Because when you look at the deep state, when you look at the swamp, when you look at all the chaos, Republican and Democrat, the nest that they built in Congress for the past 65 years. We can go back 150, but it's very, very visual from JFK forward. It's the best visuals, so we don't even really have to go all the way back. But when you look at what Congress built on their own, the lobbyists and also the contractors back here, the very first thing President Trump started hammering straight out the gate 2017 were the three-letter agencies. He didn't hammer the agency, though. He said it's the senior level leadership who's weaponized. The senior level leaderships. And then also, he was hammering all the other different congressmen and women. All right. Up here. But he hammered lobbyists and contractors. And he said we're going to end lobbyists and we're going to end contractors because all they do is make excuses to keep us in foreign wars. And without opening a massive can of worms at the moment, because military-industrial complex would have retaliated on President Trump, all right, when he's actually doing everything by the T, you'd have had people fall out had he opened, just ripped off the Band-Aid straight out the gate. But what he's saying is that every war since World War II, but Korea to Afghanistan, every war and conflict in between has been an offensive war established by men and women in Congress for money. Not for you, the people, not for we, the people, not for Americans, not for America. It didn't benefit America not one bit. That's where all of us veterans do have to rip the Band-Aid off and go, look, No one's knocking your call to service. I took the call, my dad took the call, my uncle took the call, my grandfather took the call, my great uncles took the call, my great grandfather took the call. I am a son of the Revolution and a son of the Confederacy. I have a lineage of that. But just because you took the call doesn't mean that you don't address why were we there? Who put us there? What was our reasoning? Were they really threats to America? No, they weren't. And every good veteran with a brain and logic and IQ and sense of humanity knows this. Every veteran. I have so many colonels and lieutenant colonels and generals who back me. It ain't got a thing to do with how long you served, what you saw, what you did. Clarity right now has nothing to do with anything of your experience. When there's laws. Also, for the people out there like attorneys that have a problem. If an attorney has a problem with what I'm saying, they're being dozed. They have something tied to the supplements of the deep state. So anybody who tries to deter you, tries to put you down, tries to be negative to you, tries to tell you you're full of crap, you're hogwash, and we're conspiracy theorists and all these other things for straight up talking laws and orders that are currently invoked right now, they got deep pockets somewhere, and or they're just straight up ignorant and they don't have the IQ to comprehend it, and they're also either lazy and don't want to put the initiative in to read, study, and comprehend. Because our founders warned us in the Declaration of Independence, our founders warned us about a time period such as this, when a lawyer says you can't read the law and know the law. So you're telling me that my brain can't read what you had to read going through law school. You're telling me I can't read the same books that you read and comprehend just because I didn't take a test made by some man that says, oh, you can read the law. You can understand the law. You can interpret the law. You passed the test. Just because I didn't go to law school, that's what you're going to tell people? That ain't going to work too much longer. Too many people are waking up and seeing the truth. That is the very thing Congress did to you, the people. That's what they did. Now, you had an obligation in your lifetime as well to know the law yourself and to know the bills and the acts being passed. It's cohesive. It's like the saying, it takes two to tango. Well, you have a responsibility too to know the three branches of government, how they function, how they operate, how they're separate, how they're different. You have an obligation as well and a responsibility. But no one can tell you that you cannot read the law and interpret the law, because the law is supposed to be written neutral. And that's where they messed up. See, that's where they also messed up. Congress through the years wrote all these laws, but they never dreamt a good team and a massive military was going to turn on them. And so all President Trump would have had to do, had this not been even a military operation, all he would have had to do is say, well, why'd you keep it on the books if you didn't want us to enforce the laws? You wrote it. You passed it. 98% or 99%, it's right in there of the laws and orders that he is using and invoked, but also enforcing. They've been on the paper for years. It's that simple. So the very thing that the negative and the resistance from the liberals and the rhino Republicans and the rhino conservatives are doing, they're doing the very thing that our founders warned us of. Now, the difference with the rhino Republicans and rhino conservatives, they're just not taking time enough to read, study, and comprehend that guy like me, all I'm doing is talking about laws and orders that President Trump put into place. And they all claim to be President Trump supporters. The resistance I'm getting is from President Trump supporters. And or they're just controlled opposition and they're lying and they're trying to confuse you and trick you. But, it's one or the other. So don't let that happen to you out there. All right, because this is straight up all President Trump's laws and orders. It's my intellectual property how I put it all together in a chronological order where you don't have to go look it up. Now, you need to go look it up, like when you open the book and you get to a spot and it's got a link on it, you need to look that up and read it. But you don't have to go find all these pieces. That's exactly what that is. So, very key, the capitulations. Those are real. All right, and that's also in the Law of War Manual. The word capitulation's in the Law of War Manual. All right. So Saudi Arabia, President Trump, the sword dance. All right. The sumo wrestler. Only the emperor is supposed to shake the sumo's hand. Who shook the sumo's hand? President Trump. All right. China. He went to the forbidden city of China. He's the first person in 500 years in Chinese history to go to the forbidden city of China. Wake up! The Queen, he stepped in front of the Queen, and liberals go, oh, he don't know manners, he don't know couth, he's unetiquette, he don't know what he's doing, look at that dumb idiot. They were showing you the monarchy is about to be decimated. That's exactly what's been taking place. Putin, the soccer ball, what's going on in Ukraine, I break all that down on another video. Argentina. At one of the G7 or the G20 summits, one of those, the Argentinian president was standing on the stage, this big, massive stage. President Trump walks out there real fast, and he just leaves him on the stage, and he's looking around like, what do I do? Then President Trump goes through all those people, and he's pushing people out of the way, and he gets in front of them. He's showing you military government. The only way, if you believe, let's flip it around. If you believe that President Trump did everything he's done by pissing in the Wheaties of all the deep state, all the lobbyists, all the contractors, all your foreign leaders, if you think President Trump did this as a regular president, you are out of your freaking mind. The only way it could be done lawfully to be able to do a fundamental change and flip us back to our core values and our foundation of the United States of America, the Declaration that gave the Constitution life. See, that's the one thing liberals don't understand. You wouldn't have the Constitution if it weren't for the Revolutionary War and if it weren't for our founders saying, we're declaring independence and here's what we're going to do. Every time you try to take it from us, we're going to kick your ass. That's exactly what's going to take place. That's what the Declaration meant. That every time a foreign actor tries to take what we've established, we're going to kick your ass. So try it. The British tried to revolt in 1812. How long did that last? 2 years, because we whipped their ass again. Real simple. But when that generation died out, and then that next lineage down died out, and then laziness set in, what do we get? What we got and what we've had. We had the judicial branch who started trying to write the laws and make the laws and took everything from we the people. Because we the people also got lazy and also forgot what your responsibilities are. And you just kept like a bird in a nest waiting for that little crumb from your mama to come in there and fly in there. And you just kept taking it and he kept taking it and he kept taking it. Then someone from the top had to say enough's enough. So yeah, in reality, it should have been a bottom-up revolution, but because so many Americans want to argue with a retired veteran and want to argue that I'm actually retired and want to argue and debate over a DD-214 and, oh, he couldn't serve this, he can't know this, and he can't, because that's just one little group. Then your liberals are over here. They can't even name the three branches of government. They can't even tie a Velcro shoe correctly. All right, they can lay on a diving board. They can lay on their stomach on a diving board with a bottle of water in an empty swimming pool and somehow make it look like they pissed on themselves. That's how ignorant and dumb liberals are. So when veterans, a few veterans are out there trying to combat me, but they claim to be President Trump supporters, and I'm sitting here telling you how he can be a wartime president by laws and orders, and you got a problem with me? You got a problem. You got a serious problem. It's called jealousy. All right, and it's called a military-industrial complex. So the people are fighting all over, and you don't even know what you're fighting for. And you're doing exactly what the deep state wanted you to do. They pinned everybody against core values of America. Patriotism, race, and religion. Got everybody fighting over things that, if you want to be a Buddhist and I want to be a Baptist, guess what? I can live happily in my house and be a Baptist, and you can live happily in yours and be a Buddhist. Won't affect me. and mine won't affect you. So why are people arguing about stuff that don't matter? All right? And then like me, the lower my DD-214 is to the least it has on it, but I know the laws and orders, the worse you're going to look with a long DD-214, with a long extended military career if you don't know the laws and orders. Because I've already been validated. I've already been to President Trump personally. I've already been to his private place. I've already had the validation stamp. And it ain't about me. And you're making it about me. You make it about me. All right? So, Americans out there, you need to make this about yourself. You need to make this about your family. You need to get this back. It should have been a bottom-up operation. But because so many Americans don't even know the core, simple, foundational values of the United States formation from the Revolutionary War, the Articles of Confederation, the Declaration of Independence, all right, and then the Constitution, and then the Bill of Rights, Americans, you got to step it up. You got to step it up. So the only way this could have been done lawfully from the top down was military. There's 4 ways military pairs with federal. Only 4. It's not that difficult. Executive orders, national emergencies, proclamations, and treaties. That's simple. Now, because Congress discombobulated, confused people, brainwashed people, the ones that they did that were listening, and then all the other people that weren't paying attention, who forgot the 3 branches of government, don't know how legislation works, don't know how bills are written, how acts are passed, all that. That group of people are just as lost, all right? So you had all this chaos, right? And it's festered. And President Trump took my word. I started using festering 2 and 3 years ago, and he started using the word fester. I also had another friend who used the word, and he started using it. It's really cool. He validates so many people that he knows is fighting for the good cause. But the military, it could only be done a certain way. That's why he said our gravest threats are not abroad. They're within. See, so many people don't listen to President Trump. You love him, you appreciate him, but you don't listen to him. You hear him, but you don't listen to him. Because if you were listening, guess what you would do? Hearing just affects you. Listening puts it right here. And it brings peace and calmness. All right? But when you hear, and you just hear him, and then you go hear other people, then what's that do? It brings another C word in your life, calamity. So why would you trust anybody that's not President Trump or that's not outlining something that's great that he's doing, that he's using? Why are you going and listening to other people who stir you up, make you mad, ruffle your feathers, make you angry, get you on the negative side? He don't operate like that. If he did, the liberals wouldn't be so mad again because he's playing golf. All right, the real President Trump's playing golf because he's delegated the military in a manner. And as long as the visuals keep showing what they're showing me, we're still in it. All right, we're still in it. Now we're on the good side now. And because of what is showing right now, to still see comments and to still hear comments that are negative, that are Debbie Downers and, resistance, but claiming to be President Trump supporters, you're not reading and consuming and applying what you're supposed to be. Because the only way, again, it could happen was military. And the military is still in visual operations. And the laws still reflect that. So, 2017 to 2021, they were resetting Article 1 of the Constitution. From 2021 to 2025, they reset Article 2, the executive branch of the Constitution. And right now, all you hear daily is judge this, judge that, judge this, judge that, judge did this, judge did that. President Trump saying if a judge will do this, if the judges to do that, if the judges to do this, if the judges to do that, if the Supreme Court to do that, all you're hearing now are judge. Guess what that is? Article 3 of the Constitution, the judicial branch. So you witnessed Article 1 get reset from 2017 to 2021. That's why all those unique laws and orders put into place outline a military government, him being a military governor, a supreme commander like Eisenhower was. And there's so much evidence, or this wouldn't be a #1 bestseller, and especially Part 2, thicker, which goes more into your special operations, Title 10, Title 50. But new article came out this week about Title 50, and we're going to get to that. All right, so really quick, I'm going to read them as fast as I can. On December the 20th, 2019, that's one of your key dates, Congress amended Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550, which is the War Powers Act. They amended it with Section 1550. Now I'm going to read it again really quick. It's called Reports and Briefings on Use of Military Force in Support of Partner Forces. In general, not later than 180 days after December the 20th, 2019, and every 180 days thereafter, the President shall submit to the Congressional Defense Committees. The Committee on Foreign Relations of the Senate and the Committee on Foreign Affairs of the House of Representatives a report on actions taken pursuant to the authorization for use of military force against those countries or organizations described in such law, as well as any other actions taken to command, coordinate, participate in the movement of, or the accompany, here you go, watch, listen, don't hear, listen, or accompany the regular or irregular forces of any foreign country or government when such forces are engaged in hostilities or in situations where imminent involvement in hostilities is clearly indicated by the circumstances during the preceding 180-day period. So it's covering both. There's telling you up front, and they're covering their ass. Front ass. Front ass. Says not later than 180 days after December the 20th, and every 180 days, and then it says during the preceding 180-day period. So it's making sure. That's called your checks and balances. That's your accountability. That's your responsibility. That's your transparency. All right? The key word in all that, irregular forces. Irregular forces brings in your unconventional warfare. Irregular forces brings in your guerrilla warfare. Guerrilla warfare was one thing that John F. Kennedy stressed. And it's also in the new 2024 Renaissance Special Operations Command publication. They have his write-up of guerrilla warfare. John F. Kennedy. I guess that's probably why the Special Operations Command Center is named after JFK. All right. In the first 180 days of that right there clause that Congress put there, not President Trump. President Trump didn't put that there. Congress put that there. Very key. Especially for the libtards out there. Very key. Executive Order 13912, March 27, 2020. President Trump federalized 1 million reserve components to active duty. The difference in reserves and National Guard, reserves serve a federal mission only. Means it's presidential only. Title 10 only. National Guard can serve a dual. Presidential, Title 10, and then your state, Title 32. That's why that's key. President Trump told the deep state, I'm going to whoop your ass with our reserve components. I won't even need our regular military. We're going to whoop your ass and drain the swamp with just the reserve components alone and the National Guard. I won't even have to use regular military. I won't have to use military industrial complex. Yeah, that was a jab on the end. I probably shouldn't have said that. But still, that's what President Trump told the deep state. I will use the reserve components. I will get accomplished what I need accomplished with just the reserves and National Guard alone. That was your federalization order. That order was not revoked. That order is still in place to this day. And it's going to come in key later on in the podcast, so hang tight. All right, Executive Order 13919, April the 30th, 2020. He directed a direct order to the Secretary of Defense, equal authority to federalize selected reserves to active duty. All right, in the second 180 days coming up, right in the middle, on the very end, on the very last day of the 180 days in this clause here, December the 20th, it says every 180 days after, but it says in the first 180 days after December the 20th, 2019, that will be August 28, 2020. Guess what happened August 28, 2020? Where you at, military industrial complex, twat waffles? Look, where you at? How can I not know this stuff? August 28, 2020, the very last day of the 180 business days of that clause, Congress puts out a report, and guess what it's titled? Military Justice Act. And the Military Justice Act was passed before President Trump. But then they put it in the 2017 National Defense Authorization Act, which would be the defense budget for President Trump in his term coming in. In the second 180 days, December the 7th, 2020, Executive Order 13961. It's called the Federal Mission Resilience Strategy. Guess what it is? That's the continuity of government for the executive branch. So President Trump is writing an executive order. Do you know what an executive order is, ladies and gentlemen? An executive order doesn't require legislation. It requires a pen, a paper, and a president. And an executive order is saying, I want this order enforced. So President Trump is signing an executive order called the Federal Mission Resilience Strategy, which is a continuity of government for the executive branch. So he just wrote it for shits and giggles? And then Executive Order 13963, December the 10th, 3 days later, 2020. President Trump, order of succession within the Department of Defense. Just a few months ago, the last order of succession being used from 2021 to 2025 was President Trump's order of succession on December the 10th, 2020. How come every other president had an order of succession with the Department of Defense except for Biden? Where you at, military industrial complex? Where are you? Hope you enjoy those benefits out there, because you dang sure didn't know the laws and orders you served under. So again, executive orders do not require legislation. Pen, paper, president. A national emergency. A national emergency is where presidents declare a national emergency. All right, it's got a 2-year automatic clause on it, meaning if it's not continued, which requires a president, pen, and paper, if it's not continued, it automatically terminates. Now, Congress in 1951 put term limits on the president. And I have a monologue where I show people from 1941 to 2001 what took place. So really fast, 1941, War Powers Act of 1941, War Powers Act of 1942. All right, NATO was established in 49. All right, Korean War started in 1950, lasted to 53. Vietnam started in 55. All right, so then I skip 51 always on purpose when you hear me do this, on purpose. Then you have your military-industrial complex speech on 61. Then JFK went around the Federal Reserve, went straight to the Treasury in January 1963. He also made a comment that he was briefed on something that the CIA had done, and he said he wanted to decimate them into 1 million pieces because he couldn't stomach anything else like that. And then just a few weeks later, all right, 1968, The Unified Budget Act. That's when you, the people, especially you baby boomers, but your moms and dads, like my grandparents, all right, born in the 20s and the 30s, that's when they lost their Social Security. All right, they put Social Security and the general highway funds and the aviation funds and all that, they consolidated them. They put them all together. Then what did Congress start doing? Taking money from certain funds, and they never replenished it. But then what did they do? They established inflation in 71. It's called the Nixon shock. They made the dollar as valuable as they wanted it and invaluable. It's called inflation. Then they started taxing the hell out of everybody. They made a tax for this and a tax for that, and a tax for this and a tax for that. Then our money started being exchanged in all these countries, and they never accounted for our money. A piece of paper has a serial number on it. It's called control for one, but then two, all these nations. Well, we couldn't account for it, and it wasn't coming back to us, the people. And then what did they do? What did Congress do? They kept printing money. Print. But who they taxed? They taxed us. They taxed you. And it just was a snowball headed for hell. Then you had 1991. They did another budget act. All right? And then you had your 1991 speech by George Herbert Walker Bush Sr., Daddy Bush, all right, as they call him. He had a New World Order speech. All the Republicans, conservatives didn't even hear that. He specifically said about a New World Order, and he wasn't against it. That was September the 11th, 1991. What is September the 11th in our history again? Wow. So 10 years to the day, Daddy Bush is talking about a New World Order, and 10 years later to the day, but the day before, September the 10th, 2001, Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld was telling the whole world that $2.3 trillion was missing from the Pentagon, and the next day, they didn't even waste any time with people. That is how sleepy Americans are. One day. They didn't wait a week. They didn't wait 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month, 2 months. One day. The next day. 1951. Congress put term limits on the president. How come they didn't put term limits on themselves? Because in 1973, here's what they did. Now, our Constitution does read this. It does say that the Congress is to declare the war, and the President is to be what? Commander-in-Chief of the Army and the Navy, because that's all they had back then. All right. So, what Congress did, after they put term limits on the President in 1951, in 1973, in the War Powers Act, they made it to where a president had to declare a national emergency in order to use troops if he didn't get support by whom? Congress. If Congress didn't declare war, a president could declare a national emergency to use troops and then alert Congress within 48 hours. That is why we have an executive order with a national emergency open that's been signed every 2 years and extended, continued every 2 years since 1979 by Jimmy Carter. Think about that. So that shows you that presidents also had a war with Congress as well. So not all presidents have been actually bad people. So that's why some people need to be careful with what you say, because you didn't see the war back here. You didn't see the lobbyists. You didn't see the contractors. You didn't see the mafia. You didn't see the cabal back here. You didn't see all the big power names, the wealthy, the ones who were really pulling the strings. That's why the only way this could have been pulled off was military. Because so many people are not seeing how biblical, monumental, historical, and monstrous this was and is. And we're through the worst part. So to thank, hallelujah, praise God. But if you love President Trump and you love his family, you should really be appreciative of what the man put his face and his whole name, image, brand, his family, everybody, put that stamp on. He's the face of the operation. He's not the whole operation, but he's the face of it. Somebody had to do it. He did it. All right, so that's what happened in 1973. So Congress tried to take more power into their hands, and you see it, and it's gotten worse, and it's gotten worse, and it's gotten worse. So World War II is very important. This September, my grandpa will be gone 20 years. It's so hard for me to believe that my grandfather, who taught me guitar, taught me so much about life, will be gone 20 years in September. He lied about his age to get in the military during World War II. All his brothers served. So he was the one who was a connoisseur of military law and then puppet governments. He loved what the Philippines did and what the U.S. did with the puppet government. All right, so I'm going to read the definition of puppet government in a minute. But a puppet government, if it's the first time you've ever heard it, then you're going to learn a little bit about puppet governments tonight. All right, I'm going to plug my computer up here. So what Congress did with the average American people out there is they made people buy into, and the military-industrial complex, they made people buy into that these people, these external factors were threats to us. And they confused, and they also brainwashed, but they also, whatever you want to call it, I would call it more like reversed everything to where they made all these wars. They were offensive wars. They weren't defensive at all. So all the language that makes a president a wartime president is when you're in defense mode. When you use the War Powers Act the correct way, you put us in defense mode, meaning we're being attacked, we got to defend our turf. We got to defend our turf from invasion or rebellion. Which is why in the Constitution, they have in Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2 of our Constitution, our founders put in a suspension clause. Meaning we could suspend the Constitution in case there's rebellion or invasion of public safety. And President Trump's been talking about this a long time, long before now. And what's funny about it, the humor about it, is they're talking about it again right now. And all the people out there are going, oh, the liberals are going crazy. And Republicans are going, heck yeah. And I'm like, it's already been done. This has already been done. This is the thing, it's already in print. The writ of habeas corpus is already in print. And there's laws to show you that it's happened. So if you're awake and you've been following me, validation for you. It wasn't just validation for me, it's validation for you, it's validation for us. Already been done. Defense mode. This is why Eisenhower is so important. President Trump mentions Eisenhower all the time. All the time. And he does it in the right manner. Everything is alluding to what Eisenhower established. President Eisenhower established the Presidential Emergency Action Documents. A PED is the short acronym for it, PED, so Presidential Emergency Action Document. It accompanies a continuity of government. You can't have one without the other. That's what it's for. So when a president has to use a PED and puts this in defense mode, especially declaring the national emergencies that make a military government, an invasion, and puts this in defense mode, then a continuity of government kicks in. Now go back to, again, President Trump declared a verbal national emergency March 13th. Then on March 27th, he federalized 1 million reserve components to active duty. On March 27th, that order's never been revoked. It's still in place. And I'm going to show you how it's still active with other visualizations, and there's no other orders in place. It's the only order, so it's going to validate that. All right, but March the 23rd, 4 days before that, mainstream articles in 2020 were reading that President Trump's to install a general just in case law breaks down. All right, military-industrial complex, all the big bad veterans out there that just want to be resistant and don't know anything about what's going on. Hey, do you install a general? I mean, what? Let's just play a fun scenario here. Let's just be fun here. All right? I'm 42 years old, going on 43. I know the laws and orders really well. I know what's going on. I can retain a lot of information. I know what's going on. What if they said, Derek, you know what? You weren't even an officer. You enlisted with a degree, but you were going to be an officer. And you know what? The hell with all these other veterans. You know what's going on. How about you come on in here and we install you? Boy, you talking about some mad veterans. So see, if people would listen, it proves the occupation. It proves the operation. It proves the military government. It proves the continuity government. It proves the government itself. It proves the puppet government. It proves everything. You don't install a general. Every veteran that knows military law and knows how you either go to officer candidate school or you commission through an ROTC program at college or you go to warrant officer candidate school or you enlist knows you don't install a general. A general is already ranked in their place and they're already where they need to be. And if the law breaks down, they're already there. And there's these things called presidential emergency action documents. 2 years ago, there was a twerp out there claiming to be, veteran. It wasn't even a veteran, active duty person out there, right? And they putting all over their pages. They were trying to gain publicity. And I'm like, I'll give you publicity if you want it, but people are going to know how dumb you are when I give it to you. This person was saying that a president can only serve 2 terms. Congress violated the Constitution. You got to go read Article 2, Section 1, Clause 1. The Constitution specifically says that a president is to serve 4 years in a term. Nowhere does the Constitution say that the Congress is to amend or to establish the rules on the president. Now, George Washington set the standard way back and said that he wasn't going to run a 3rd term. All right, but there's nowhere in our founders' writing, nowhere in the Federalist, nowhere in the Constitution. The Constitution says a president is to serve 4 years in a term. Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I love this because on Instagram, like 2 years ago, there was an idiot in the comment box. These people are so hateful that they don't even realize how they're hateful, and they want to be so hateful that they end up looking so ignorant. Person said, this is the same guy who says that Roosevelt died in his 4th term 13 years, and they said 13 years doesn't equal 4 terms. Yes, it does. He died in a few months into his 4th term, 13th year. He was voted in 4 different times. And then that's when Congress put term limits on the presidency. Because Roosevelt was the one who had the First War Powers Act and the Second War Powers Act. Very, very key that you know that. Very key. And a lot of generals defied a lot of orders during World War II. So a lot of countries in Europe better be thankful that a lot of our men defied orders. Because there was a lot of politics going on at that moment as well. All right, so Eisenhower, the Presidential Emergency Action Document, this idiot out there was saying, they can't extend their power. Yes, they can extend their power. So, the writ of habeas corpus, that's Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2 of the Constitution. Then you take your March 23rd, the mainstream articles talking about installing a general. You don't install a general. All right, that was all optics and comms for you to know that there's something unique taking place. All right. Then you have your irregular forces of Section 1550, put there December the 20th, 2019. That's your unconventional warfare. That's your clandestine operations. That's your covert operations. Fox News, a couple of days ago, had on an expert of covert operations. They're showing you daily. Even though Fox and those are nuggets and they're crumbs, but they're still showing you. You can skip all the crumbs right here. Now, we're going to read the definition of unconventional warfare really quick. Unconventional warfare, this is on Special Operations Command.mil, your official special operations. Unconventional warfare, actions to enable a resistance movement or insurgency to coerce, disrupt, or overthrow a government. Already in writing. Already been done. President Trump deserves all the facial recognition. The generals, the world leaders, the capitulated leaders, all of them. It's already been done. All right, now we're going to read the puppet government. A puppet government is a government nominally independent, but effectively controlled by an outside power. Continuity government is a plan to ensure the government continues to operate effectively during emergencies, including crises where the primary leadership might be incapacitated. All right. So a puppet government. Now I'm going to read a paragraph out of the Pocket Guide, Special Operations Command Pocket Guide. Now you got to apply. This is where you got to listen. You got to go back and apply all those executive orders in that time. So they're under that umbrella of Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550. In that first 180-day clause and the second one are your major key orders. Now watch this. So you heard the irregular term in your Section 1550. Now watch this. Most or all of the represented activities will be conducted by a successful resistance or insurgency, check this, regardless of whether the United States government makes the policy decision to support it. United States government support to resistance, unconventional warfare, is initiated by either a presidential finding or an executive order. This is your Special Operations Command publication, Unconventional Warfare, put out April 2016, in between President Trump talking about Guantanamo Bay staying open, and in between the Military Justice Act of 2016. This was put out. And also the pyramid. The very first resistance pyramid was put out in 1966. The resistance pyramid in the new unconventional warfare, 2016. You know what all this operation also is stemming around biblically? Jubilees. 50 years equals a jubilee. So from 1966, the pyramid and the resistance, to 2016, that's 50 years. Guess what word changed off of that pyramid? Agitation to assassination. I've also proven how the assassination is all part of special operations. All right, you'll have to see that breakdown elsewhere. But it's all part of this. Unconventional warfare, government in exile, puppet government, shadow government, continuity government, military government, continuity of operations, continuity of government. It's all here. And you don't have to make it complicated. Once you learn Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550, once you learn those executive orders where it says initiated by a presidential finding or executive order, President Trump's got those in place. They haven't been revoked. None of them. Now, let's read the definition of a presidential emergency action document. Presidential emergency action documents are classified executive orders, proclamations, and messages to Congress that are prepared in advance of potential emergencies to be ready for use when needed. They were developed during the Eisenhower administration. They are defined by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, as the final drafts of presidential messages, proposed legislation, proclamations, and other formal documents, including Department of Justice issued cover sheets addressed to the President to be issued in the event of presidency declared national emergency. So it's telling you right there that the President is also receiving stuff from his departments to do this. So genius what's going on. If people could just Listen and hear it. So now you got to roll back. Roll back to your December the 7th, 2020 and December the 10th, 2020. Executive Order 13961 and 13963, your federal mission resilient strategy. President Trump signed and he put it on Pearl Harbor Day. Executive Order 13961, which was the continuity of government for the executive branch. And before we get to the rolling, how come these military-industrial complex people out there, how come all these resistance out there, how come that when you go to this day, I just looked it up again last night, when you go to the departmentofdefense.gov, to the archive page of your national security strategy booklets, your publications, how come every president has a national security strategy except for Biden? The most recent and the last publication archived right now, May the 12th, 2025, on the Department of Defense.mil is the 2017 National Security Strategy. Make that make sense. If there's not a military government, which would mean the military is in full control, they already have a strategy. That's what that would mean. And the continuity of government means Congress is doing what they're supposed to be doing because they're under continuity. How come the most recent on the archive page of your Department of Defense is 2017? Where's Biden's? And how come there's no White House military office? When you go to Google and you type in White House military office, the most recent archived WHMO is Obama's. Do you know what the White House military office does, all you military industrial complex? All you hoity-toity, my DD-214 is bigger and better than yours. Do you know what that is? That's the logistics of your presidential travel. That's your Air Force One, your Marine One. That's presidential travel. How come there's no White House military office? January the 1st. So when you go from December the 7th, 2020, Executive Order 13961, which is your continuity of government for the executive branch. That's the President Trump saying, we're about to be in a continuity government. We're about to go into a continuity. We're about to go into a military government and a continuity government. December the 10th, 3 days later, order of succession. The most recent, in 2025, the most recent order of succession within the Department of Defense is from December the 10th, 2020. Executive Order 13963. 24 days later, January the 1st, 2021. Here comes a FEMA publication under the Federal Continuity Directive 1 and Federal Continuity Directive 2. Here comes a FEMA publication. What's it say? Reconstitution of the executive branch. So remember, 2017 to 2021, resetting of Article 1, your legislative branch of the Constitution. 2021 to 2025 is the resetting of the executive branch. Article 2 of the Constitution. Reconstitution, by definition, means to set something back to its original state. So here's President Trump signing Executive Order 13961, December the 7th, 2020, and 3 weeks later, this publication coming out under your Federal Continuity Directive 1 and 2, which are your continuity government implementation phases and plans. Here's a publication called Reconstitution of the Executive Branch. And guess what Section 2.3 inside of it says? It says when Congress cannot establish the new seat of government in Washington, D.C., Congress and the states will get together with their enumerated powers and issue a new seat of government, which means a new capital. What did President Trump call April the 2nd, 2025? He called it Liberation Day. April the 2nd in our history, 1792, is a coin act where they made silver the lawful tender. You know what it's called? The seat of government. January the 6th, 2021. That's the only thing liberals hang on to. But they don't know anything about laws and orders. On January the 6th, 2021, first time in U.S. history, there were 2 objections that took place in the state of Arizona certification count. They're supposed to stop the count, go into a special chamber. It don't matter if it took 3 months to sort it out, 4 months to sort it. It doesn't matter. They're supposed to stop, sort out Arizona. First time in U.S. history you saw 2 objections take place in a certification. Our founders put this in place. Think about that. Our founders, before technology, before everything we have, our founders put in all these checks and all these different places, these check marks. You couldn't just, have a vote, you're president. They put in all these check marks. 2 objections took place in the state of Arizona. And conveniently, 2 20,000-pound doors opened from the inside and a quote-unquote insurrection took place, which we know was not an insurrection. We know the FBI were planted there. It's a retaliation by the deep state. But your liberals hang on to it and this other. It's all been planned. The military government funneled all these people. They funneled the deep state. They trapped them. COVID was a retaliation, and January the 6th was a retaliation. They trapped them. They only had a few moves left on the chessboard. So they had to do what? Try to distract the people and confuse the people. It worked with a lot, but it ain't going to work for long. Alright? Because President Trump, retribution will be our success. The more they keep exposing all the money trails, money, follow the money, it's going to dwindle. And all you people, when you start seeing your bank accounts open up, you start seeing taxes being eliminated, and you start seeing the drug costs come down, when all the things start working in your life, you're going to be able to go, holy crap, you're going to know, and you're going to have trust in the people who are fighting for you. It's real simple. January the 6th, Congress broke 18 United States Code 2381, 2384, 2385, 3 U.S. Code Section 15, and 52 U.S. Code 20511. Go look them up. Seditious acts to overthrow the government. Seditious acts. There's a huge difference in a seditious act to overthrow the government versus a lawful military law, invasion, rebellion, and President Trump telling you our gravest, meaning our worst, our gravest threats are not abroad. They're within the deep state. So you should be pissed that all these people retaliated when they were given a line to cross all along the way. Come across this line. It's going to get worse. It was going to make it. They were given a line. They took their side of the line. So January the 13th, President Trump had a speech and he told you that your great-great-great-great-grandchildren. Think about that. You're never going to see your great-great-great-grandchildren. He said your great-great-great-great-grandchildren are going to live to talk about this time period. An old white man being inaugurated? Come on, ladies. Let's just be honest. JFK was young. Obama was black. Every other president was old and white. What the hell would our great-great-great-great-grandchildren be talking about old-ass Joe Biden for? January the 18th, 2021, President Trump signed an executive order protecting of judges. Protection of judges and law enforcement. You got to know how law works, ladies and gentlemen. You don't have to be a lawyer to know the law. Anybody who says that, they're deep state and or they're ignorant. Or both. The Declaration of Independence warned us of this day. You are to empower yourself with how our government works. We, the people, are the government. The Congress represents us. They write what we want them to write. That's how it works. But unfortunately, because all the people through the years forgot the simple core values of the United States, simplicity. We have dumb-ass liberals who celebrate the 4th of July blowing up fireworks, but will in turn talk about people like you and I. They better be glad I'm not Commander-in-Chief, because I would deport them. I would be a dictator. I can't wrap my mind around that. Just the same thing as if you claim to be a President Trump supporter, but you're mad at me for showing how the man could be a lawful wartime president and didn't go away, which would be unique and extraordinary. And it is, and that's exactly what happened. Make that make sense. How did we get so ignorant and dumb in this nation that you claim to be a President Trump supporter, but this guy is a grifter because he's showing how President Trump, by law, stayed in authority. And President Trump put it on his ball cap, 45-47. You've got to be one ignorant, you know what? We'll sigh. Let me take a sip of apple juice. January the 20th, 2021. 3 cannons at Arlington is not a 21-gun salute. Another thing. We have people so ignorant that you can go to ArlingtonNationalCemetery.mil, the official site, and it tells you the 3-volley salute, 3, uno, dos, tres, 1, 2, 3, the 3-volley salute, meaning 3 cannon salute, and it tells you 2 sentences, seen or heard, at Arlington is not to be confused with the 21-gun salute. The 3-volley salute, it states it again, the 3-volley salute is a military funeral. And the first time in U.S. history, every president from President Trump 2017 and Richard Nixon, 1969, YouTube, 4 cannons, National Capital Region, 4 cannons. On January the 20th, 4 cannons, 21 rounds, 21-gun salute. This 2025, they did it backwards. They even put Arlington on January the 19th, which has never been done before, but then the 21-gun salute, 4 cannons, 21 rounds, National Capital Region, January the 20th. The outlier is January the 20th, 2021. There's old Biden's outlier, 3 cannons at Arlington. It's a funeral honors. But they weren't saying Biden is deceased. They're saying that Biden is not real, but it's saying the monarchy is about to be dead. That's what they were telling you. March 2021, the National Guard. All the National Guard that turned their back on the motorcade, because none of that was real. That was all theater. They had to show the average American people something, because people would have known something was up if they didn't show something on TV. But the National Guard, they're there for an inauguration, but they stayed till March 2021. Thousands of National Guard. For an inauguration, these National Guards stayed in D.C. till March 2021. And it was 2020. It was COVID, remember? So they had spacing. They didn't even let the normal crowd be there. So who the hell was going to rebel? Who? If people in this nation, if the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and all the ones that the liberals call are they're all this and that. If anybody was going to rebel in United States history and do something stupid, it would have been with a black president. Because they claim the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys are racist, and they claim they're KKK and all rejuvenated KKK. Well, if that's the case, then the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and all your white supremacists, they would have rebelled against the black president. Not an old-ass white dude who walks around like he's got a corn cob stuck in his ass, and he trips on a flat stage, he trips going upstage, but he walks perfect on sandy beaches. When you really think about it, that tells you how dumb a lot of Americans are. Not all, but most. You just have to. So now you fast forward to January the 19th, 2025, the last full day of a president's presidency, the last full 24 hours. Joe Biden, if you go to Google and you type in Federal Register, Executive Orders, go to the .gov page, click on 2025, Joe Biden. The last thing on quote-unquote Joe's record is an executive order. A revocation of Executive Order 13961. A partial, not a full. You can't revoke something that wasn't invoked. So what that, if I'm a conspiracy theorist, or I can't know what I know, he didn't serve long enough, oh, my brain stops where my service ended. I mean, that's how dumb you are if you say that. You have to think about that. So what in the heck is Joe Biden doing signing a partial revocation on the very last day of 24 hours of a presidency of Executive Order 13961 from December the 7th, 2020 that fits snug as a bug in Michael Jackson's glove? All right, snug as a bug in all of these things that are in a chronological order that outline a military government. What's he doing? What's he doing partially revoking a continuity of government? You can't revoke something that wasn't invoked. See, they're telling you right there was a continuity of government. And because a continuity of government accompanies a presidential emergency action document established by Eisenhower, that's all you need to know. So watch this. I've done it before, but not quite like this. Your Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550. You scroll to the very bottom. It's the little thing on the bottom, the last thing on it. Executive documents. Now watch this. You've heard me do this before, but never like this in this order. Memorandum of President of the United States, July 19, 2021. So if Joe was president, all right, he wasn't by law, but we're going to do this for the normies out there. First off, it says Memorandum of President. Don't say the President. So it's a memorandum. July 19, 2021. If Joe was president, let's do our math here. January the 20th, February, March, April, May, June, July. 6 months. That's how long Joe would have been president when this was put into place. Now watch this. Well, I'm going to read it for you. Gotta listen. By the authority vested in me as president, not the president, as president, by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, including Section 301 of Title III, United States Code, I hereby delegate to the Secretary of Defense the authority and functions vested in the President by Section 1285A through E of Public Law 116-92 on the use of military force and support of partner forces to the Congress. Now listen to that again. That would have been Joe Biden giving the Secretary of Defense the authority and functions vested in the President. And guess what 1285A through E, Public Law 116-92 is? Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550. With the date of December the 20th, 2019. When President Trump would have declared presidential emergency action documents and federalized the 1 million reserve components, that put the military government on alert. Meaning, so whenever they showed you the 3 cannons at Arlington, all that was a show. That's when we went into the continuity government. Because you have Executive Order 13961, December the 7th, 2020, and the Order of Succession, December the 10th, 2020, with the Department of Defense 3 days later. Then you have the January the 1st publication of the FEMA under the FCD1 and FCD2. You have that publication, the Reconstitution of the Executive Branch. They're telling you we're about to have it's not going to be a normal executive branch. It's not going to be an executive branch. It's going to have a military government and a continuity government. So that was, quote unquote, Joe relinquishing authority on paper in 2019. Do your math there. Well, excuse me, in 2021. July 19, 2021. I got the 19 backwards. So you're already, so that would have been a visual. but it's also a com, it's also a stamp, it's also law. You can't argue with it. Now, you can be someone that don't like it, and you'd be crazy not to like it, because all it's done is cleaned out child trafficking, which is, I hate to put, it's like you don't want to separate women and sex trafficking, but child trafficking, sex trafficking, human trafficking. Past Congresses and past presidents have combated a little bit of that. There's been a full-blown, massive operations cleaning out all your deep underground military bases, the DOMs. You've heard that. People call that conspiracy theory. You can go look at the Defense Intelligence Agency. They put out a publication in 2018 for the DOMs. All right, it's all real. Anybody who says the tunnel operations and the underground operations is a conspiracy theory, you're a damn fool. You're ignorant and you're a damn fool. And what makes it worse is that you're ignoring what happens to children. That's what makes it worse. And if you claim to be a Christian and you want to scuff it under the rug, you're not reading from the same Bible that I am. Because my buddy Brad all the time talks about the millstone. Go read what the Bible says about a child, if a child is harmed. It'd be better to put a millstone around your neck, drop it in the ocean. Have you seen what a millstone looks like? You probably want to Google that. So see, when you want to scuff this under the rug, or you want to say it's hogwash or conspiracy theory and bull crap, and you can't know this and you can't know that, all you're doing is aiding the deep state. And even though they've been decimated, you're still supporting that. You're supporting that ideology. So if you don't really support that, right here, you probably should read by laws and orders how President Trump can most certainly have been, and he was, a wartime president. 45-47. He put that there. April the 2nd, there's that day, Liberation Day, April the 2nd, 2023. So he told you in April the 2nd, 2023, he told you, I'm not only your 45th president, I'm your 46th, and I will be your 47th. He was telling you a year and 7 months before on a ball cap that I am your 46th president, and I'll be your 47th. That is what the dash stands for. So, all this ties in. Now, your National Guard and reserves have been active daily. You'll hear comments out there. You've seen them on my pages. You'll see your military-industrial complex idiot come on there, and they want to flex. Oh, I was 27 years in the military, and that's bullcrap. That's Title 32. We go out of state all the time. Where are the orders? You have to be on orders. When a National Guard from Tennessee goes to Alabama, Montana goes to Idaho, New York goes to New Hampshire, you're on a Title 10 order. God, I mean, it's baffling that we have people like that. And all you're doing is confusing people because you haven't read what's in place. You haven't kept up what's in place. You're not keeping up with current events. And you don't even know the very laws and orders that you took an oath to. Every one of us veterans raised our right hand, which this is a reverse camera, so it'll be this side. But every one of us raised our right hand to Title 10, Section 502. You can't have one portion of Title 10 without the other. You can't be all gung-ho this military about this, but not this portion. It all goes together because it's about liberating people. It's about liberation. It's about protecting our people first and foremost. I mean, people should be pissed in reality. When you really boil it down, you should be very pissed at our Congress through the years when all these other nations for money that you never benefited from anyway. And President Trump's already told you that. He said at least they should have got the oil. Well, the Bushes got the oil, but guess who the Bushes got the oil for? Themselves, not America. And President Trump tells you that. That's all validation to show you that all this stuff has been politics, propaganda. And every veteran needs to rip the Band-Aid off and realize that your service counted. Your call to service counted. But what they put us in these wars for has to be addressed. That's the portion that has to be addressed. Because our oath to this nation says foreign and domestic. When they added foreign in 1862 to the oath. It had nothing to do with Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Bosnia, Kosovo, Somalia, Panama, etc. Had nothing to do with that. It had everything to do with people taking what we have from us. And when you think about all the Congresses who didn't protect their own people and let all this riffraff come in, this border stuff that President Trump talks about, he's not talking about. He uses Biden for great reasons. All right? He uses that because it's a military government and it's what they put in place. But all these illegal migrants have been here for years. All these illegal operations, all the cartel, your child trafficking, your drug trafficking, your sex trafficking, your human trafficking, they've been doing this for years. And to hear people that don't want to know how President Trump can be a lawful wartime president, all you're doing, again, you're scuffing it under the rug, but you're also giving credit to the deep state. You're giving credit to the evil. You're giving credit to all that goes against the grain of the United States of America, the real United States of America. So now, Texas. All right, Texas proves your Executive Order 13912. In Texas, in 2024, February 2024, 14 states deployed to Texas. There's your deployment terms. Oh, you military industrial complex. Boy, y'all love to talk about your deployments. I deployed here and I deployed there, I deployed there. And most of you didn't even do a thing. You didn't do a thing. You didn't even see combat. And you shouldn't be bragging about combat. You shouldn't be bragging about war. That is what, in Americans, there's a lot of Americans who think the same way. That's military industrial complex. That is the very thing that Eisenhower and all the guys before that were against. You got to lose that mentality. You got to get out of it. We got to get back to America first. We got to protect our borders first, our people first. If someone wants to come in here and try to disrupt us, then we need to take care of that. But all this other stuff was man-made wars. And it didn't benefit not a single person. Not a single person. So the Texas border, 14 states deployed to Texas. You have President Trump was the only person seen at Texas that had the term presidential around his name. They showed, quote-unquote, Biden down in Brownsville, Texas. But if you go to brownsville.gov to this day, it says the 47th president visited Texas. So why can't they go in there on a coding, simple error and change that? Then, Brownsville, Texas was not even the hot spot. Del Rio, Texas has been the focal point. Eagle Pass and also Del Rio has been the focal points this whole time. But President Trump told you the whole time it's central casting. So what part of President Trump are you not listening to? He told you it's central casting, central casting, central casting, central casting. That portion of Del Rio is central casting. And President Trump is down there, way back in February 2024, on a podium. He's got the governor of Texas and the adjutant general with him. That's a rank structure. He showed you a rank structure, and he told you on world TV that it's a war going on. What does the writ of habeas corpus say? Invasion or rebellion of public safety? It's already been done. They had Stephen Miller validate the Midnight Rider without saying it, but he talked about just 2 days ago on world TV doing an interview about suspending the Constitution. It's already been done. It's already been done by laws and orders. That's your general comment by the mainstream media March 23rd, 2020 to install a general, just in case the law breaks down. All the executive orders in place. The President Donald John Trump in Texas, February 2024, with the Adjutant General and the Governor. That was a rank structure. You don't salute a former president. You don't at ease a former president. When he walked in that fob, at ease! You don't salute a former president. A former president who was never a veteran before, don't salute a flag. He showed you all throughout. They showed him at races. They showed him at different events where there was a flag. He's sitting there saluting. if a veteran was going to be mad about anything, if President Trump was a former president because he never served in the military, just because he became president, when you leave the presidency and you weren't a veteran before that, you cannot salute the flag. All right, that's just customs. All right, they go back to this, and rightfully so. President Trump the whole time. It's there. All right, and you don't add ease him, and you don't salute him either if he's a former president. And then he told you that day it's a war going on. The adjutant general is the one that gives it all away, though. The adjutant general reports to the governor unless the National Guard are federalized by Title 10. The only Title 10 order in place that would have applied and been applicable to those 14 states going to Texas is Executive Order 13912 from March 27th, 2020. Because there's not another executive order in place. There's not another Title 10 order in place except for that. Now fast forward to 2025. This coincides with it. The New York State Senate on March the 11th, 2025 wrote President Trump a letter on March the 11th, 2025 requesting him to federalize the National Guard to active duty. Well, I have Army reports from Army.mil from 2022 and 2023 that the New York National Guard were in the subways. Those of you from New York, you already know that. National Guard been in operation in the subways since 2021 and 2022 and 2023. Adjutant General has a report out of that. Then, when you look at the March 11th, 2025 letter from the New York State Senate, if you go look on Google, if you go to executive orders by President Trump, there's no executive order there. There's no executive order from March 11th, 2025 to right now, May the 12th, 2025. The only executive order in place for the New York National Guard is March the 27th, 2020. And it tells you in reports that 2022, in the 2023 report for the 2022 New York National Guard, there was 2,800 and some odd change on active duty in 2022 in the 2023 report. If you go to Google right now, guess how many is on active duty? 8,200. New York National Guard are federalized. Where's the Title 10 order? You have the letter from the New York State Senate. Where's the Title 10 order? The only Title 10 order in place is March 27th, 2020. Then, President Trump just signed an executive order about a little over a week ago. An increase of military and law enforcement. Well, there's your old comment that one of these big old popular, big old blue badge that claims to be a President Trump supporter, claims to be an insider to President Trump, shared some idiot 2 years ago who just happens to be a hater, was in a hate group. I don't know if, I'm pretty sure she knew this, but saying that, military doctrine specifically bars and doesn't, I'm paraphrasing now, but they were saying that military can't operate with law enforcement. Joint publication 3-57, civil-military operations, the dash matters, by the way. All right, 3-57. Go to page 46 and read what it says. That generally you don't want the military operating with civil because that could be deemed as what? A dictator. Unless what? It says unless Title 10, presidential, and it says Congress or the Constitution. Well, guess what the suspension clause is? Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2. Article 1, if the liberals are getting mad that the Constitution is being suspended, it's not the president. Article 2 is the executive branch. Article 1 is the legislative branch. So that means Congress suspends it. Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550. That's your War Powers Act. That would also be Congress doing that. They're the ones who declare the war. And then President Trump did establish the national emergencies. So there's a joint there. All right? And it says irregular forces and regular. But irregular, that's your clandestine. That's your covert. That's your unconventional warfare. That's your guerrilla warfare. That's your resistance. That's your revolution. And then you have President Trump sign an executive order just a week and a half ago. It says an increase in military and law enforcement. That's Joint Publication 3-57. Civil-military operations. Go to page 46. And it specifically tells you that no, you generally don't use your regular military with civilian unless Title 10 and then Congress or the Constitution says so. The only Title 10 order in place of that magnitude, 1 million reserve components, is March 27th, 2020. Executive Order 13912. President Trump invoked Title 10, Section 12302. It's all there. Then there was an article put out this week. Just an article, and it's talking about Title 50 and large-scale operations. Now watch this. A new article put out just this week. Let me pull up something real quick. And on page 5 of your PDF version of your 2016 Unconventional Warfare Special Operations Command Pocket Guide, on page 5, guess what this says? The application of unconventional warfare is much broader and adaptive. The methods and techniques used in the planning for operations are dependent on the state of the resistance movement, environment, and the desired end state. Support to resistance organization in its incipient state requires significantly different planning and support than one in the war of movement state using Mao's phases. Ooh, you might want to go look up those. The first will most likely be small, very sensitive, longer in duration, and often conducted under Title 50 authority, whereas the latter is large-scale and open, as with the Northern Alliance in 2001. And this article this past week, and you can Google this, go to Google, type it in, Title 50 and large-scale operations. What's on the pyramid? At the top of the pyramid, on page 11 of your Unconventional Warfare Pocket Guide, in consistency with page 5 here in paragraph, what's on the pyramid? Large-scale operations. Title 50, irregular warfare. What's in Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550, December the 20th, 2019, in the first 100 days, is that Executive Order 13912? The 1 million reserve components activated, active. If you're arguing at this point, you're an idiot. There's no other word for it. All right. President Trump this past week, he said he didn't use surrendered, gave up, ran away, we're done, we don't want any more. President Trump used the Houthis capitulated. Now, in your normal conversations out there, you're sipping your little mimosas or you're having your little margaritas and you're getting together with your friends and your family. If you are able to talk about what's going on, current events, you don't talk about capitulations. You never did before. You might be now talking about what's going on, sure. But before, you didn't talk about capitulations. You didn't talk about the white flag of surrender. You didn't talk about puppet governments. You didn't talk about occupied territory. You know why? Because they're not government terms. They're all law war manual. President Trump said the Houthis capitulated. Well, in October and November speeches leading up to November the 5th and the third term, President Trump said, we are an occupied territory. We're an occupied country. We will soon no longer be an occupied country. The Great Restoration starts November the 5th. Occupied country. Occupied territory. Law War Manual. February the 18th, 2025, a reporter is talking to President Trump, asking the question. She asked about capitulations and a puppet government. I'm the only podcaster out of all the million moving lips out there who's talked about puppet governments. My grandfather taught me that. It was a World War II tactic. And you can go read all about the puppet states and the puppet governments. The second Philippine is the best one. Now go back to the Defense Intelligence Agency. Put out in 2018. They put out a publication to do with Iran. In there, mentioned 14 times are the Houthis and Yemen. Now go back to your 1979. The oldest executive order with a national emergency declared is from 1979 with Jimmy Carter. Your liberals out there are all spewing, oh, you Republicans, conservatives, you patriots out there, you said President Trump wasn't going to start any foreign wars. And look at him. He's in his first few weeks. He's bombing Yemen. He's doing this. Yemen, right below Saudi Arabia, the Houthis are Iranians. All right? But they're down here and they've gone into all these different nations. That's why some of you need to keep your mouth shut about Israel. Some of you are looking pretty atrocious, especially my Facebook. Some of y'all look really bad. Y'all don't know jack doo-doo about Israel and the Israelites. You don't know anything about Arabs. You don't know anything about the Palestinians yet. Some of y'all are looking atrocious. All right? I'm not going to go deep into that, but you're looking atrocious. All right? You need to just keep your mouth shut. Let it play out. All right? Because you have no idea what you're talking about. All right? The Houthis are down in Yemen. All right? Yemen. Guess who declared the national emergency for Yemen? Obama in 2012. All right? So President Trump told you, I'm ending wars. All right, so Iran, it's really Iran, but whatever you want to call it, but Iran, no matter what happens with Iran, the oldest executive order with the national emergency, Congress and the presidents have kept in place, and there's several more to do with Iran with old Clinton and also Obama. There's been some additives to it. Why didn't they take care of this? See, so everybody should be mad and upset if you knew how long they prolonged all this stuff. They weren't doing anything to benefit you. None of this was to benefit us in the first place. And Iran kept building nuclear facilities. Build up, build up, build up, build up. Who's the one that chanced death to Israel and death to the U.S.? Iran. That's why so many people look atrocious right now. All right, attacking my friend Siggy Flicker and attacking some good people. You look atrocious. And also when you do that, you're proving you're not applying what's going on. And you're only doing injustice to President Trump. You're doing injustice to his family who sacrificed. You're doing injustice to the generals. You're doing injustice to the world leaders. And you're doing injustice to everybody who's in operations and in their places doing what they're supposed to be doing. You're only doing an injustice to it. So you can keep looking atrocious. It's on you, boo-boo. You do your thing. But when it's all said and done, you're going to know that you look pretty atrocious. All right? Laws and orders answer everything. All right? So, the tariffs. This is where it gets fun. And I'm closing here because now we're getting to the fun part. The tariffs. The tariffs, President Trump put an executive order out a couple weeks ago. And it outlines all of the phases of the tariffs. They were put into place in 2018. Now, this is how atrocious liberals are. I mean, they're all over the internet. They're all over the boards. They're all over the social media. They're all over the comment boxes. And I'm like, explain to me this. Okay, I'll play devil's advocate for a moment. I'll step outside of knowing what I know. I'll step outside for a moment. I'll play devil's advocate, and I'll sit in the neutral seat and go, okay. So Joe Biden was president, quote unquote. Okay, so the tariffs are presidential. So president has the authority to put on tariffs, put them off. Then you have the Trade Act of 62 and you have the Trade Act of 74. Some of y'all were born then. So I'm not going to pick on ages here, but let's just be honest here. This is a long time ago. For long. But especially for liberals to be yelling, screaming, kicking, cussing. And I'm going, just liberals, just listen to me. President Trump put the tariffs in place in 2018. If Biden was president, and I don't know what I know, which it's hard to talk like that because it wasn't real, you know, and Biden wasn't real. It's all an operation. But still, then they portrayed to you, the people, that Democrats had control of the House and the Senate from 2021 to 2023. Which means that if Biden was president and Harris was vice president, and even those Republicans out there and conservatives, the normies, who are back there going, oh, Obama is behind the strings. But okay, let's go with that even. If Obama was back here pulling the strings, so that would have meant that Democrats had full control of everything. They didn't terminate one single thing by the man they claim is a threat to democracy. They didn't terminate one single thing that they claim the man is violating the Constitution. They didn't terminate anything. He met with foreign leaders, 12 foreign leaders, 13 different times from April 2024 to December, which would have been a violation of the Logan Act, all right, of a sitting president in an election year if Joe Biden was president. And you would have had a former president meeting with foreign leaders in private places, which would also been a breach of national security. There's been all kinds of federal violations and breach of national security. They didn't invoke the Logan Act or the 25th Amendment or the 14th Amendment. And could have, because it was all visual for everybody to see. No one would have been able to know he didn't. Yes, he did. Oh, yeah, he did. 12 leaders, 13 times. Yep. Trump Tower. And also over here at Mar-a-Lago. And yeah. I mean, so when you look at that, Democrat control. They could have done anything they wanted to do. And there would have been a thing that a patriot, American loving, you wouldn't even have to be a Republican and conservative. You'd just be an American lover. Tired of taxes, tired of it. You could just be a neutral person who's just tired of all the chaos. And there wouldn't have been a thing anybody could have done by law. They could have justified their actions and said, well, we're doing this by law, we're terminating this by law, we're terminating this by law. Why didn't they? Every single thing that President Trump did from 2017 to 2021 was handed back to him. So if they would have thought, even in a neutral setting, even if they thought, you know what, man, he might beat us in 2024, we better do some things here. And then make it to where he has to walk back in and make it his life difficult and have to go back and do all these over again. They didn't do that. He walked right back in to the average person. Here you go, President Trump. We didn't terminate. Here's 8 executive orders with 8 national emergencies. We didn't terminate those. Your war orders are still in place. Your troops, your National Guard, your reserves, they're still activated. Here you go. We didn't change anything. Here you go. Oh, but by the way, you're a threat to democracy. That's what you have to say. That's how stupid this is. This is how simple, but how stupid it is. So if you're a rhino Republican conservative, still spewing and regurgitating surface level bullcrap, or if you're a liberal who has your head up your ass so far that you can check your tonsils out, all right? Whichever way you want to go with that, that's exactly what you're saying. So see, you don't even have to watch news. You don't have to watch regurgitation. You don't have to do any of that. All you need to know are the laws and orders in place to know that, oh, this is a unique moment in history. A military government, continuity government, clean out. You wouldn't have to watch all the other stuff, hear all the other stuff, even waste your time, your energy, and all that. When you just apply that they call him a threat to democracy, and he's violating the Constitution, but they didn't change anything. The very thing, the Doge clean out, and Biden in 2021 and the American Rescue Plan Act in 2021 funded Doge. It was Obama's Executive Order 13576 that established it. All right. So why didn't they remove the tariffs? if tariffs are a threat to, and it's going to tax other people, look at the liberals who are screaming that out there. That the tariffs are going to add to the American consumer and all that. From 2021 to 2025, if Biden was president, they did not remove the tariffs. It's that simple. It is that freaking simple. NBC interview. President Trump recently was in an NBC interview, and she was real rude to the average person, but she kept stressing over and over and over, your orders are still in place. Your orders are still in place. Or you need to remove the orders at the border. They're telling you. I mean, they're telling you. They're telling you. They're telling you everything. Then they're talking about the military zone. So you got the military zone down there. President Trump made it to where even if you Americans, if a liberal goes down there rubbernecking too much, they're going to apprehend you too. All right, but guess what I just had come in the mail again? My badge, right? I got my badge where I can go with military and I can go with press and everything. All right, so there's that. You got to know these things, right? So they made all the border a zone. All right, so meaning it's a foreign territory. You step into it, it's a military territory. You step into it, it don't matter who you are. You're going through the process. So the protesters better be careful. All right. Article 3, the judges. Right now you're watching all the judges. All the judges. Judge this, judge that, judge this, judge that, judge this, judge that. You're watching the resetting of that. All right, the reason why it's important is because you got to go back in our history. Marbury versus Madison, 1803. All right. You got to know the separations of powers. The legislative branch and the executive branch are voted on by we the people. We vote in our representatives and we vote in our president and then his vice president. We do that. We vote on that. The judges are appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. So when we the people vote in who we want as president and our representatives to write the laws that we want in our states and in our federal, when the judges are trying to be the law, meaning they're trying to write the law, but they're also trying to be the dictators of it, all they have to do is interpret the law. So if there's a discrepancy with the law and states get in a feud or whatever it could be, any scenario, they're to interpret the law. That simple. They're not to influence it. They're not to try to change it. None of that. They're to interpret the law. And that's why Marbury versus Madison, 1803, was a landslide and a landmark case. There's our founding father, the father of the Constitution, James Madison, going into a Supreme Court that they established. Think about it. This is the founding father, the father of the Constitution, going into a Supreme Court of which they established and having to tell what a law is and was. And that's why Justice Marshall had to rule a certain way, because they knew if he didn't rule a certain way, all the founders could have done was either fired all the judges, fired him, or just restarted and rewrote a whole different systematic process of a judicial branch. They could have gone back to the drawing board and go, okay, we can see where the power is going to get too out of hand with the judicial branch. We got to do something different. That's why it ruled a law repugnant to the Constitution is void. Meaning, if the law doesn't support the Constitution, it's void. Think how many laws we have that are not good. That's why it's important. The judges took law into their hands. That's why it's very important what took place in 1871 and 1878. The Organic Acts of 1871 and 1878. 1867, Canada went back under the crown. 1871, we back under the crown. All right? That's why President Trump tells you from 1880s, he's alluding to it. He said from the 1880s to 1913, our country had more money than they knew what to do with. They had tariffs. But what happened? They hijacked it. The Congresses. In 1913 is when income tax started being put on people. And it just got worse, and it got worse, and it got worse because people the average person quit knowing simplicities of government and what your role, what your responsibility is in the Declaration of Independence. That's why this time around you better thank God. You better thank God, and whatever you believe in, you better thank God that President Donald John Trump, the generals and world leaders, all these up here from the top down, are godly men, are godly people, know the foundation, know the principles, know the core values, and have done it to the T of Title 10 and Title 50, but also with the Constitution and also the Declaration of Independence. From the top down, they've cleaned it out this way, because in reality it should have been a bottom up. But it couldn't be, because so many people are arguing and fussing and mad over stuff that don't even matter. Like idiots out there who attack me. Now I can handle the attack itself. But when you have veterans who are so worried about my DD-214 that I didn't do what they did, and it has nothing to do with that. Not a thing to do with that. So you're saying that my brain's supposed to stop where my opportunity also stops? That's what that's saying. And what you're doing when you do that, gents, because it's mainly males, it just means that you have a small, and your testosterone is out of balance, and you have a ego and you have a jealousy problem. But other than that, what you're doing though is you're not setting the standard for your children, your family, your friends, their kids, and then when all the people who do find this, because it's still selling big time, it's still selling. Part 1 and Part 2, what's going to happen? The more who read and more who read and more who read and more who study, you're going to alienate yourself and ostracize yourself. And they're going to look up to the very person they thought that you were a hero to them. If you do have a long DD-214 or extensive, they're going to go, why didn't you know and how didn't you know? And I don't want that to happen to you. But my role and what God put me in is to empower people, show people, here's the .gov, here's the .mil, here's the .gov, here's the .mil. I show people all the answers. And I don't Hansel and Gretel them. I don't throw them a crumb. I don't have paid subscriptions. Everything I do is on my time and my dime. And I love it. Man, I love being that dude. I love going, yep, I know who all the ones that are doing it for the money. I know the ones who are in it for show. I know all the ones who accuse you of things are the very things they're doing. So remember that out there. When you're being accused of something, that's what they're doing. It's whoever's accusing you, that's what they're doing. So you got to find positivity in your life. And so the other positive stuff that's really awesome is he was in this NBC interview, and they got to talk about the 2020 election. And she was being like, for the average people out there, and he goes, no, it's still under litigation. Ladies and gentlemen, they're going to tell you that they're going to show you in history what took place in 2020. He said, we have it all. We've called them all. Right? They're going to unveil all this. But they're going to show you that this was an operation. This was never about 2020 alone. But that was a little nugget for you if you didn't hear that interview. He said it's still in litigation. All right? Laws, courts, Supreme Courts, etc. President Trump filed through the state of Texas, by the way, through the United States Supreme Court. He's never lived in Texas. And we all know what Texas is going to be. So there's that. And we also know what Texas has always been. All right. And so that's why that's so big. All right. That when he filed this court case, and then she brought up about a few times, he said, the 59 of 60 circuit courts. Right? Well, they're all appointed by Obama, Clinton, Bush. All right? So see, that's why right now is the resetting of the judicial branch. It's so important that you know what 2017 to 2021, Article 1, legislative branch, Constitution. 2021 to 2025, executive branch of the Constitution. And right now is your resetting of your judicials. Now, it's not going to take the full 4 years. But then also, what did he put out? He just put out a line all over his stores of Trump 2028. Now, I know people are running rampant and saying, that could be Don Jr. and that could be Eric and all that other stuff. It could be Ivanka, it could be anybody, Laura. But now you got to go back to John Bolton in 2024. February, there's that February 2024 again when all the states are deploying to Texas. John Bolton is on CNN, who they have terrible, terrible ratings. And if everybody will share this video, we can actually get more views than CNN, because a lot of my videos are getting 75, 100,000 views on Facebook. But CNN don't even get that much anymore on their prime time. All right, so if we get people to share, we're beating CNN, which means we've already flipped the narrative. It's already been flipped. But John Bolton said that, and this is the one time reading fails you, where I tell people, my followers that don't, the one time reading does fail you. On the screen it says, can President Trump serve a second term? And they were talking about all the court cases, the lawfare on him. They didn't call it that because it was CNN, but they were saying about the court cases. And they asked John Bolton, the host asked John Bolton, and John goes, well, the Constitution specifically bars the president from serving a third term, but he said, knowing President Trump like I know him, he will seek to ratify the Constitution and serve a third term. And on President Trump's 2028 shirt, it says, rewrite the rules. And see, what they're telling you is that the 1951 Congress doing what they did, when he called it a rule, he's saying that they violated the Constitution, because the Constitution is specific on how many terms a president. It don't even say. It says that 4 years in a term. So it tells you they can be elected as many times as we the people want them. It was left open. All right. So when he says rules, he's actually even slapping the face on history, but also on the deep state, going rewrite the rules, because the Constitution is not a rule, it's a law, right? So he's saying rewrite the rules. So he's telling you 1951 was null and void. It went against the Constitution. It went against Marlboro versus Madison. So that's what they're telling you. All right, and then the other cool thing is Memorial Day. So found the video finally found the video. 3 years ago, President Trump is telling you that Memorial Day 2025 will be the marker that we will start celebrating every single day from Memorial Day 3 years ago. He said Memorial Day 2025, every day from Memorial Day 25 to July the 4th, 2026, and every day after that, we're going to celebrate. Guess what Memorial Day is this year? May 26th. May 26, 1783 in our history was the day that our founders celebrated the end of the Revolutionary War. And they celebrated it with feasting, they had prayer, they had speeches, they had a show of military arms and cannons and weapons display. It was a big celebration in Turnbull, Connecticut. All right, you can go read all about it. And guess what they called that day? If everybody remember, right before I went globally viral, August 24, 2022, I sat with an old Marine Corps veteran, 17 years. You can't make this stuff up. 17 years, Marine Corps veteran. He was 84 years old at the time. And they sat me with him, and he asked me every difficult question you could ask me. And he wanted me to add him to my documents. So I added him. And he read them. Well, 2 weeks later, we're sitting there with 100 people as witnesses, and he says, son, you have everything that'll help so many people understand what's going on. He was like, but there's one thing I want you to add to those documents. He said, one thing. He said, at the very front, on the very first page, you said it's a monumental historical operation. He said, son, I want you to add that it's a biblical, monumental, historical operation taking place. And he said, God's going to bless you. God's going to take this all around the world, and it's going to help people, and it's going to bless people. Now, that was before I went viral, and I have over 100 witnesses who witnessed this. All right, so if you want to attest to them, you can try. Okay, but you're going to look like an idiot. This man said God's going to take it around the world, and it's going to help a lot of people. Biblical. Everything's been based around jubilees. All right, jubilees. Our founders called May 26, 1783 the Great Jubilee Day. Now see, So now what you have is this, and I close. Now, again, I've done this before, but I'm going to do it again. You have two options. Only two. And it's a one or the other. It's not an and or. That's why literature matters. That's why verbiage matters. Terminology matters. It's one or the other. So either Joe Biden is the greatest president in United States history along with President Trump. You can't slice that because, again, they portrayed to the people a Democratic-controlled House and Senate with Biden and Harris as president. They didn't change a thing by President Trump wartime orders. Nothing changed along the board. The DOGE was funded by Biden in the American Rescue Plan of 2021, Plan Act. All right. Then you have your Panama Canal, that executive order, Hong Kong, continued by Joe. You had Executive Order 13848, the election interference, continued by Joe. All right, all these executive orders would have automatically terminated on their own because they had national emergencies attached to them. Joe and Kamala, and if you say, well, oh, Obama's back here, all you Republicans, conservatives that have your head up the rear end too. All these executive orders were continued. Then you have your Yemen, your Obama. And then you have your Iran, Jimmy Carter, Clinton, Obama. All these orders continue. Then you have other executive orders, your National Guard, your reserve components, 1 million reserve, not revoked. So you have all these regular executive orders that are wartime orders that weren't revoked. So all these orders of your wartime orders and then also your national emergencies that the quote-unquote all Democrat control just handed right back to President Trump and he's a threat to democracy. He's violating the Constitution. So either Joe Biden is the greatest president with President Trump and it's an operation together, or President Trump is 1,000% correct on the deep state, the cabal, the swamp, the Biden crime family, all of them, the WHO, Bill Gates, all these people who are connected, the cabal, the mafia, all of them. The global alliance. And you can only end on number two for one reason. If it were number one, the liberals wouldn't be mad. There's got to be a group of liberals out there that would have a little bit of sense to go, hey, they continued all these executive orders. They didn't terminate them. And they would have to say we, from not a French standpoint, they'd have to say we as a collective, as a group, they'd have to say, oh, and we had Democrat control of the President, House, and the Senate, and they didn't terminate anything by President Trump. And we're calling him a threat to democracy, and we're calling him a violation of the Constitution, but our people didn't terminate not one single thing of a wartime order, and the National Guard and the reserve components and the border of Texas and the New York National Guard and all the National Guard operating all over the United States of America with the domes and the tunnels and the trafficking, the child trafficking, sex trafficking, human trafficking, drug trafficking. They wouldn't be mad and pissed. There'd be a portion of them waking up going, oh, shoo, I shouldn't say what I said. They're not. So you can only land on number two. And it's that beautiful. It's that beautiful. Can you imagine? I did all that in 2 hours and 14 minutes. I thought it was going to take like 3 hours to do all that. So, anyways, I'm still signing these. You can get them at Rattletrap, RATTLETRAP, 1776.com. Rattletrap1776.com. All right. I sign them personally if you go through me. If you're international, you got to go through Amazon. If you want them super fast, sometimes I'm on the road. I'll be in Utah and Idaho next week. So You won't be able to get them quick until I get back, because I do all of my packaging, I do all of my shipping, I do everything. My family, we're a small little network. We do it all. All right, so if you want it like that, all right, there's that. I also have my country music book. That's the #1 bestseller too. It tells all the secrets of country music. All right. I'm the first artist to unveil all the dirty secrets and how country music works and how it's rigged. All right. It's the #1 bestseller. All right. Same website. When you go there, RATTLETRAP1776.com, you click on Get More Gear and it sends you over to Shopify. Then click Shop All and you'll see all of them. All right. So there's that. Also, there's a lot of fake pages out there. I've been running in and meeting people at all these events that have been conned into all this stuff. So, my social media girl, Felicia, she always comes in hot. As soon as these videos are done, the comment box, it'll be my link tree. LINKTR period. That's where the period goes. Between the R and the first E. LINKTR period. E. /1776 Nation. Those are all my official accounts. I now have a blue badge status on Instagram and Facebook. My music page, so Derek Jonhson Country, blue badge. I validate that on my page. Here's my link tree. So we shouldn't have all these fake pages. Telegram, there's a fake page that's got 100,000 followers. One of them's got 70,000 followers. That's 170,000 people who are following the wrong pages, that are conning them somehow. And that's out of my control. So when people are losing money and they want to, had a woman attacking me on X and Twitter not long ago, hey, that's your problem. All right? Now, I'm sympathetic and I have compassion. But when I tell you over and over and over again, and people don't share, don't correct, and I'm showing you, here's the link tree, you don't listen to me, there's nothing I can do about it. Not a thing. I hate it. I hate that there's scammers. I hate that we have frauds in the world of that capacity. They don't understand. Well, first off, they're not even in the right mind to even comprehend. So there's that. But, these people are pathetic. They're money hungry. And then we have all your regurgitators out there. Then you have all your podcasters. They don't want to share the right stuff. So, look, I'm like, I love President Trump for one reason. Well, a lot of reasons, but one big reason. Tom Homan, Dan Scavino, especially Tom Homan. I don't care who gets mad. I don't care. You get mad all you want. But you don't need any other podcasters. This is your foundation right here. All right. Now, there's some good podcasters out there. There ain't no doubt. So when I validate people and stuff like that, I'm not knocking all podcasters. But there's a lot out there that you don't need to be listening to. All they're doing is taking what they see on mainstream and they regurgitate it and they put it a little spin of their own and they put it out there. All right, and they're not helping you whatsoever. All right, so these are #1 bestsellers for a reason. If you want to know what President Trump has done and what he's doing, we're already in the golden age. We're moving, especially May 26th, 2 weeks away, baby. So we're going to the golden age. We're going to the premium. So much stuff's going to happen. You're going to see so much. It's hard. Anyway, it's hard to describe. But you still should want to honor the man. You still should want to honor his family. All right. So there's that. So anyways, we'll see you guys soon. And love and appreciate everybody in the comment boxes. By the way, too, on Instagram, obviously, whenever this is done, it wipes out the live comments. So come back over on the when I get it posted, and be sure to comment on it. So we love you and appreciate you. Thank you for all your love and your kindness and your support. I do appreciate it. I do see the comments. Don't think I don't. But when I'm live doing this, I stay focused on the points where I can get everything out, and I try to get it done quicker. That way people don't have to spend so much time, rewinding, doing all the stuff, slowing it down and whatnot. So we'll see you guys soon. And this will be posted on Rumble. My only Rumble is Rattletrap1776. Okay, go to rumble.com, go to search bar, type in RATTLETRAP1776. That's my account.